Hi everyone, welcome to our gold sponsor presentation from Kortext. Just to let you know that we will be recording this session, but anything that you put into the chat or the Q&A won't be recorded. You can turn on captions for this session by clicking the CC button at the bottom of the stream window. We're very grateful to all of our sponsors. Don't forget to visit the sponsor booths to interact with our sponsors and pick up information from them. We've had some prizes like a hamper from AnyBook, a £25 Amazon voucher from OCLC and a Google Nest from EBSCO. So if you engage with the sponsors and with the platform in general, you can win points and you can win one of these brilliant prizes. Please do read the code of conduct, and we would appreciate it if you could comply by that whilst in any sessions and treat each other with respect. And now I will, without any more pause, hand over to Robin and Adam, who are representing our gold sponsors, Kortext. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Nicola. That's brilliant. And welcome everyone to our presentation this afternoon. I'm delighted once again to be talking with you guys at Academic Libraries North and supporting the organisation. I'm actually joined today by Adam Robinson, who's Content Manager at University of Derby, and you'll be pleased to hear that it will mainly be Adam and a bit of me, because Adam is going to take you through Derby's eTextbook journey, which we've been partnering with them on over the last 12 to 6 months. So if I just hand over to Adam, making sure I can change my slides, which are not going at the moment. There we go. So I'll hand over to Adam and get him to take you through the Derby journey.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Robin. First thing I want to say to everyone today is just that please bear with me. I'm hailing to you today from Buxton, and sometimes my internet connection can be a little bit choppy. So if I cut out, bear with me. I will come back, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have later as well. So yes, in terms of the eTextbook pilot scheme that we've been running for the last sort of 5 to 6 months with Kortext, I thought I'd give you a little bit of context, a bit of background to how we came to the scheme. So University of Derby, we have approximately 22,000 students, and traditionally we've had a much higher ratio of print to e-content, particularly when it comes to our monograph purchases. So a few years ago, we instituted an e-first policy, and this was to address that gap, but also to support digital capabilities and, of course, ultimately provide a more equitable experience for our users. We're all very familiar with the limitations of print, certainly when it comes to being able to have enough shelf space in the library and being able to provide enough quantities of text for students. And then, of course, we also have to consider the advantages of ebooks when it comes to accessibility features, for example. We also want to take stock of NSS feedback as well, and we realised we had a little bit of work to do when it came to bolstering our electronic reserves. And this point was driven home even more firmly, of course, by the impact of the pandemic in 2020, and it just really strengthened our resolve to bolster our electronic reserves. So that's kind of like the origins for how we came about to start thinking about developing an e-textbook scheme. However, e-textbooks, of course, are very expensive, and when they're made available through aggregators, and that's a big if, then they are often only available in very limited user access models. And of course, from the student point of view, they don't understand the nuances of the administration of ebook licenses. They simply know that when they come to the library and they can't get hold of the text that they need, it's just a disappointing and frustrating experience for them. And we wanted to avoid that. So we began to think about how we could develop an e-textbook scheme that would be affordable, but also provide that widening access. And of course, we had to, build a business case for this because we needed to secure some funding for it. And the first step with any business case is obviously identifying your key stakeholders, who's impacted by this program that you want to install. And of course, in our case, it's going to be library staff, faculty, and students. And the focus is always going to be on the benefits to that student experience. And there are many for the textbook scheme. Of course, we want to support students from diverse backgrounds. Again, that equitable access is absolutely key. But also we want to support students when it comes to finances as well. If we think about how much a textbook can cost the students, sometimes textbooks can be in the range of £150 to £200, and these can soon start to stack up across multiple modules. And we're very aware, very conscious that students do see themselves as a customer. They're paying an awful lot for their tuition fees, and we want to be able to support them wherever we can. Then, of course, we can think about the flexible access textbooks to their texts where they need them, wherever they need them, device is really, really good. And of course, those accessibility features are absolutely key. Also consider some enhanced studies as well. So we're all familiar, of course, with being able to highlight and notes, but being able to share those classmates is also a real benefit, a real strong point. And then crucially, I think one of the things that from a library point of view, having the opportunity to be able to bring the library to the students. This saves them having to come to campus, having to the library and find texts where we take to them. And one of the key drivers for us is being able to make these texts available at the point of need, wherever the student needed them. So to have them on our read list, we want the library catalogue, of course, but also in the veteran environment as well. But it's not just students to consider, it's also academics. And there are many benefits for the tutors as well. The key one for me is the analytics dashboard. I do feel this could be a really powerful tool for academics to use this to support their students, students who may be struggling or in danger of falling behind. There's an opportunity for academics to look at the usage stats and see students engaging. Are they engaging? When are they engaging? And be able to start opening some conversation if there's any worrying trends there. Likewise, interactive tools. I've already mentioned a little bit about students being able to make notes and share those notes, but this can also be true for academics as well, teaching staff. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity for academics to be able to highlight a certain piece of text and really drill into that text and leave a note and say, this information is key, or have you thought about this, or really develop those conversations in a group session, but also on a one-to-one level as well. So we set about getting some funding. We applied for some funding to launch a pilot as a proof of concept. And the scope of our scheme was really to look at a 6-month project that would allow all first-year undergraduate students access to 2 eTextbooks per module. Now, there were certain challenges to setting this up. We had a very narrow window for setup. That's because we placed our bid for funding and we were awarded the funding quite late at the end of the first semester. So we found out we got the nod in the very beginning of December, and we had committed to a 31st of January launch date, which gave us roughly 6 working weeks, of course, because we had Christmas in the middle, which didn't give us a lot of time to go out, engage academics, get those titles in, get them over to Kortext, get them set up all of our integrations with our VLE and the various systems we needed it in. So there's an awful lot of work there, and I'm tremendously proud of the work of my team for working so hard and so diligently to get that all set up and indeed meet that deadline. Ultimately, we had 317 modules and roughly 400 titles taking part in this scheme. As I said, we had to set up the integration with our VLE, which is Blackboard. We had the Kortext bookshelf integrated into that, which was fantastic. Likewise, we had waveless links that we inserted into our reading lists, and we had mark records for the catalogue as well. And I'm very grateful to Kortext because they were incredibly responsive. Again, that was a very narrow window to get all those titles over to them, and they were very quick at getting them back to us in these various formats. And wherever there were issues, whenever we had problems, say a title was unavailable or a later edition became available, they're very quick to help us find an alternative or get the later edition over to us, which is fantastic. So that was the initial setup. Obviously, there's a lot of work involved in that, but the real work really begins, I think, post go live, because that's when we have to start your promotional campaign, reaching your students and letting them know that it's there. Because it's all well and good having these resources, but if the students aren't aware that they're available, then you're not going to get the most out of this scheme. So we tried to think of every possible channel that we could possibly utilize to reach our students. We used our social media. We launched a series of webinars. I think I did something like 14 sessions in 1 week. We had on-campus visits. We created a LibGuide with all sorts of resources on there. We had posters around the library. We created bookmarks that we could put inside the print copies of texts in the library. We had screensavers, plasma screens, email signatures with links to the LibGuide, videos, and we even had a physical display stand as well. But one of the key things that I think was really powerful that we were lucky enough to take advantage of was the Student Ambassador Scheme that Kortext launched this year. This is a scheme where students are able to essentially act as advocates for the scheme, but they are given training by Kortext, which is fantastic to develop their CV, but also they are paid as well, which is a great opportunity for the student, but fantastic for us in the library as well, because they can act as advocates and they have a much greater reach than we ever will. And we found that to be tremendously successful. We had one volunteer for this scheme in the pilot. His name was Andrew, and you'll hear a little bit more from Andrew a little bit later on, but he was a very powerful voice, and it was fantastic to have him involved. And then the final point I wanted to make on this slide is just that this has to be a sustained campaign beyond launch. To really get the most out of this and get that proper return on investment, you have to make sure that you're constantly promoting it. It's not just about the launch date and the first week or two. You have to continually be working to reach those students, because with the best will in the world, there's going to be students who just have not heard of, just not seen that tweet, or have not been to the library and seen that message that the scheme is available. On this slide, you can see a couple of examples of some of the things we did to sort of engage our students. On the far left, you can see an example of the bookmark there. In the center, there's one of the posters we put up. And on the right, you can see our display stand, and you can see John from Kortext when he came in to speak to students and answer their questions, which is really good. Okay, so we're at the point now where we're starting to analyze a lot of the usage and get some feedback from students about how successful the scheme has been. You can see some data here. I think it's important to frame the data sets that we're looking at. This is essentially 4 months worth of data going from roughly the beginning of February to the end of May. As you can see, in terms of the access, it's quite broad and fairly surprising when we think about some of these locations where students are actually accessing their text from. Is very surprising to me. I never thought I'd be seeing University of Derby students accessing the text from Australia or South America. And then if we look at some of the more usage trends here, we can see at this point there was roughly 2,400 users actually engaging with their text, which is fantastic. But it's also some of those analytical details there as well. Some of the added values, such as the searches, the print copies, the annotations. They're really healthy engagement figures there. We're seeing obviously 11,000 annotations, over 4,000 prints. This is fantastic. We're actually seeing proper engagement, real value from these texts, which is brilliant. Likewise, we can see the amount of pages that have been accessed. And then crucially at the bottom, we can see how the usage has pretty much gone up each month of the scheme, which is fantastic. The only dips a little bit in April, but I'm going to put that down to the Easter break. And now on this slide, I just wanted to sort of drill into sort of what the eTextbook use looked like compared to some of our print holdings during this same 4-month period. And I just want to make clear, because I think the wording might be a little bit confusing. This is looking at individual unique users. So if we look at one of these top performing titles, which was critical thinking skills, we can see that for the eTextbook, 190 users engaged with that text during this time frame. Versus just 17 for the print copy in the library. This is even more dramatic if we look at the second example, the undergraduate research handbook, 177 users versus just 1 during this time frame, which I think is interesting. It's definitely given us a very strong message that there's an appetite for digital content, and that there's maybe a little bit of either a lack of awareness or a lack of engagement when it comes to our print holdings. And then this slide just drills into a little bit more about the engagement, really. And I think this is kind of key, because it's all well and good being able to say, okay, we've had this many number of users look at their book or access a page, but what does that actually mean? Because a use could be a student going into their text, looking at the contents page, closing the book and never looking at it again. these kind of stats give us a little bit more indication that actually there's real value for money here. If we look at the patient assessment and care planning and nursing title in the top right-hand corner, yes, we can see there's over 21,000 pages accessed, which is great, but we can also see 320 pages printed off. We can see 111 annotations. If we look at the Royal Marsden Manual, there's an additional 361 searches. Again, this is an indicator that students aren't just looking at the book, they're actually using it and engaging with it. And recently we've been doing some surveys as well to sort of get some feedback from students, get some of that qualitative data and get an understanding of what they felt the pilot was like for them. We asked some very broad top level questions, and I thought I'd share a handful with you just to give you an indicator of what the scheme has been like from the student perspective. So if we look at the first question, was the eTextbook scheme helpful to you? A very broad question, but nice to see a very broad response of 90% yes, which is great. Likewise, how likely would you be to recommend this scheme to a friend? 85% majority, very likely, which is really healthy. And then on this slide, we can see a couple more of these kind of questions as well. How easy was it to find your eTextbooks? Again, overwhelmingly, 82% found it very easy, which is fantastic. There's a 2% that found it difficult. That's something we need to think about going forward and how to address that and how to support students. But overall, that's very encouraging. And then an interesting one, which features did you find most useful? Again, pretty broad spectrum here, pretty even response. There doesn't seem to be a clear winner, but it's really good, again, to get that insight into what students value. And we have a little video here from Andrew.
Hi, my name's Andrew Wilson, and I'm an undergraduate law student at the University of Derby. I'm the incoming disability officer at the Union of Students. As part of my manifesto, I wanted to fight for the opportunity to have ebooks and e-learning. For me personally, I find it a lot easier to be able to hold information on my laptop and read my screen than I do being able to hold a thick, heavy core book, considering that I've got Asperger's, ADHD, and problems with my hands. The current eTextbook scheme that's running through, in collaboration with the library is known as Kortext. It's a standalone platform that allows you to see every book that you have available in your module. I can access all those books anytime, whenever I need them. If you can get ebooks, it can be cheaper, it could be free. If I can save 90 quid or 100 quid, I'd much rather prefer that and have something that I'm going to easily access rather than carrying around 10 books to a lecture. All I've got to do is carry my laptop. It's so easy to use, it's remarkable. It has a great display options. You can currently see at the moment it's set for Open Dyslexic in the front, which is how I read it, which makes it so simple for me to read. It's all different settings, so every student that has a different preference can change it to one that's going. I can adjust the page width. So if I'm having a bad day and I'm struggling to read, I can widen it out to make it more spaces between the words. When it comes to your tones, I prefer white on black. So that is a lot easier for me to read. You can make notes. So it's just as simple as highlighting the text, and you can create note, you can copy text, you can copy the text for the reference, you can copy a link to it, share it with a friend, or you can even do something as simple as search the web. So easy to use, it's unbelievable. I've actually set up a group with my fellow law students, so I can click share to the group, and the lecturers can do the same thing as well. One of the search functions, so it's like if I'm looking for a specific case and I wanted to know a quote, all I've got to do is this. And it brings up 16 books that have all mentioned Lord Diblock. And it takes me straight to the page. It saves me so much time and I don't get frustrated with it. Being able just to go click, click, click. Oh, it's heaven.
Fantastic. So it's always great to hear from a student what their experience has been like. And as I said, Andrew was such a powerful speaker and such a great advocate for the scheme. So thinking about the future, at the moment, as I said, we are currently just reviewing all of our data, looking at the responses and seeing how successful the scheme has been. And of course, we'll have to think about funding going forwards. So I must give you the caveat that right now, this is very much my hopes. This isn't set in stone at the moment, but let's say I'm optimistic about the future. So what I'd hope would happen is that we're able to extend this pilot now to a full 12 months and thereafter roll it on to a continuing multi-year agreement. What I'd like to do going forwards is engage teaching staff a lot earlier, be able to really properly onboard them, introduce them to the analytics dashboard and help them to get the most out of some of these features. Likewise, I want to be able to introduce students to the scheme as part of their induction. Crucially, I want to get to them at the beginning of term and let them know that they don't have to go out and buy a print copy because they have their own digital copies available to them. I would like to arrange a lot more on-campus visits. I think it's absolutely key to actually have that captive audience, if you will, but be able to speak to people in a classroom face-to-face is a lot more impactful than doing an online session, I found. And then ultimately, I'd like to extend the student ambassador scheme as well. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for students in terms of their developing their CVs. Obviously, it's a paid opportunity as well. But as I said, from a library perspective, having that reach is fundamental and fantastic. Now, more broadly, though, on a conceptual level, I would hope to be able to explore the scheme and use it more as a tool to support some of our university strategic goals, such as addressing the attainment gap. That's a real key objective for us. And I think that there's definitely the potential to be able to use this scheme to support students who are perhaps in danger of falling behind. Likewise, I'd like to explore some of the interactive functionality with Kortext and what else we can do, really dig into what else can we do to really support that relationship or develop that relationship between student and academic when it comes to their texts, develop that one-to-one relationship. And then finally, I would hope to be able to listen more to the student voice. It's so absolutely key to everything that we do at the university. And I think this is an opportunity again to hear what it is that they want. So often we make decisions based on data, what we think is best, or what we think students need. And this is an opportunity to have that feedback come directly to us and really know what it is that they value and be able to make decisions based on that.
Thank you, Adam. That was a great summary, and it's been a delight to work with you and your colleagues from Derby in setting that programme up, and it's great to see some of the outcomes from a student perspective. I just want to take a couple of minutes now just to look at future plans from a Kortext perspective, and then we'll try and take some questions at the end. So just as one thing that we launched, for those of you who attended the Spring Librarian webinar, was really an upgrade to our platform. The new Kortext Arcturus platform really is enabling us to facilitate a lot of the functionality that Adam has just alluded to, particularly that sort of a one-to-one relationship between the lecturer and the student. So the new Arcturus platform is fast, secure, intuitive, it's unlimited, reliable, sustainable, and intelligent. But how does that really work from this sort of student, academic, and library experience perspective? Well, off of the platform really hangs upgraded functionality for the librarian, upgraded functionality for the student, and upgraded functionality for the academic, alongside some really powerful analytics, which allows that insight and engagement monitoring. So just a quick summary of those. So from an academic standpoint, within the Librarian Smart Hub, we've upgraded the acquisition portal, both from a look and feel perspective. There's a significantly improved inventory search. You can review book details in seconds. You can see DLP pricing up front. You can compare models between one-to-one and library. You can select the pricing model you want and add to your basket. There's a title not found workflow improvement. You can easily import reading lists and basket rollover. And you can also incorporate our DDA plan management functionality in the portal as well. And there's lots more to come on that from a library workflow and efficiency of operations standpoint. From an academic perspective, just picking up on what Adam said earlier, what we're able to do from an academic standpoint with our new module functionality is academics are going to be able to create and assign modules to students. They're going to be able to communicate with students through the module overview. They're going to be able to assign learning activities such as reading and questions to drive engagement. They can schedule learning activities aligned with the curriculum, and they can also upload supplementary content with global upload and share with students. So in one place, There won't just be the Kortext content, but there will also be content that the academic wants to add in, be that video, be that PDF, or whatever that might be, into the academic module to share with the student. And then from a student standpoint, the other end of it becomes the workbook. To allow a student to make and save notes and annotations in one central place as they can currently, but they've got their own scratch pad of learnings for their entire academic journey. So they can create workbooks and folders to manage their notes from all their eTextbooks. They can note, organize, and reference information using rich text editing tools, and they can show workbooks and notes with a classmate using Kortext groups. So in summary, what does that mean then from your library's perspective? Kortext really is an unmatched supply of reading this content. There's over 2 million books, there's 4,500 publishers, it's all the books for all the students, and it's all the time, including course packs, academic university content, journal access. We are
lead 5 minutes, Robin.
Thank you. Yes. We're lead supplier on all major procurement frameworks for eText, SUPC and APAC. So really it is the best value for your institution and student, covering all the content. It's fully integrated into library and university teaching and learning ecosystem. There's a real laser focus on the student experience. There's AI-powered suite of tools, which is giving translation, which is giving read aloud, and the reach. We're now in 2,300 universities worldwide, 163 in the UK, and millions of students. And one final benefit is if anyone visits us in the breakout room after, come and talk to our very nice people, and one of you will win some very nice Kortext cupcakes for your entire library staff. So the winner does really cake it all. There we go. If there's any questions, I will stop sharing and you can see us in full HD.
Wow. Free cakes, I think we'll all be along there later on.
You did mention, Nicola, there's lots of free.
Librarians' hearts.
Absolutely.
So we have had, sorry, Robin.
Go ahead.
We've had a couple of questions, so we've got a little bit of time left, thankfully. So Daniel has asked, what happens after the pilot of 12 months ends?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for us, as I said, at the moment, we're just reviewing that data and securing funding for going forwards. So if successful, then yes, we'll extend it for 12 months, but it will be built in that we'll have an option to extend it for multiple years.
Thanks for that. The next question is, how long does the student or academic have access to the notes they've made, etc.?
So from an academic standpoint, it's as long as they've got their academic email. From a student standpoint, we are starting to port student access over to their alumni email. I know certain universities are now switching from the undergraduate email to the alumni email, and we are able to, via our customer service team, port access to the students so they can continue access to their bookshelf and therefore continue access to the notes they've made as an undergraduate.
Brilliant, thank you. And that question was from Natalia. Sorry, I didn't mention that. We have a question from Evelyn asking, what happens to the student notes after their module ends? They lose access to the textbooks at some point, presumably. Was that question answered by the previous answer? I'm not sure if that's exactly the same.
So just on that, they will keep their notes. It depends on the access model they've got for the textbook, whether they will continue to keep the textbook for life or whether it's on a library model or whatever. And so it depends on each individual library's model of how the student has the textbook.
Okay, great, thank you. We've still got a couple of minutes. Could you tell us a little bit more about, I think we've got another question from Evelyn actually. Have you had to encourage academics to choose core books that are available on Kortext?
Well, one of the key challenges is engaging academics. I've found so far. So there's definitely a lot of work to be done around this. So I think what we said to academics was that we'd encourage them to pick their their key texts, the ones that are the sort of the Bible text for each module, the ones that they teach from, they encourage their students to go back to again and again and again. They were kind of the texts that we encourage them to select.
And then from our perspective, if it's digitized, we will more likely have it. And if we haven't got it, then we'll get it if there is a digital copy available.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I think we're running just to time. I don't think we've got any more questions at the moment, so I think we're fine to end the session. Just reminding everyone again, do please visit those sponsor booths. You can be in with winning a prize from the prizes that have been donated by the sponsors, and now you can get the additional prize potentially of some cakes for the whole library, which I'm sure we'll all be happy about. Now we will be after this session, we'll be moving into another break for 15 minutes. So please do access the lounges, go and have a chat with the other delegates in attendance while you're here, talk about the sessions that you've attended. And then the next breakout will start at 4 p.m. Thanks, everyone.